Record. Okay, so we're going to be picking things up with the drama triangle again, the Cartman drama triangle. And today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the persecutor role and clearly understanding that. Now, from a high level overview, you might recognize this pattern as somebody who aggressively judges, see themselves as superior. They seem to function with an underlying belief that you have to be ruthless to survive. You know, they tend to lack remorse for the harm they cause. Easily offended and reactive is another common trait of the persecutor. And they seek control, often at the expense of other people. So that's a lot of the way that this role plays out. The solution for the persecutor ultimately is to develop something really weird called compassion, you know, because there's generally a lack of it when somebody is indulging in persecutor mentality. Okay, so with the persecutor, there are a number of underlying attitudes that predispose people to this. Okay, and we're going to discuss the persecutor baggage claim, which is going to be all of these different attitudes, and there are 9 of them. All right, so we're going to go through each of the 9. So it's a bit of a self-assessment. Hey, can I relate to any of these 9? You know, maybe I've got my own persecutor moments, or see if you can develop your radar and be like, oh yes, I've definitely seen somebody who has that attitude or thinks that way. So we want to just be able to, as we go through them all, it's a bit of just like reflecting on yourself, like, you know, have I ever thought this way, or can I relate to this because I've experienced somebody who has that particular mindset? All right. And, you know, and just to recap, when there's a drama triangle, typically it's a dysfunctional social interaction that involves a lot of blaming, name calling, victim mentality, enabling, and all kinds of behaviors that tend to not really lead anywhere meaningful, but just create more of an emotional drain and suffering. And some perverse part of people likes the drama, so they continue in the drama triangle. And with the persecutor in particular, they will make other people seem like the bad guy. So if they do anything bad or wrong, they will be likely to make up slander or to point fingers at somebody else and try to turn people against somebody else. That's one of their common behaviors, is trying to turn everybody against somebody to hide something they did and save face is very common. They tend to also be prone to a little bit more of anger and aggression, right? So, and they just really have tend to have more of a repressed sensitivity, and lack of compassion goes along with. Now, anybody can flip into persecutor role. Sometimes people like play it a lot, and so I'm just speaking to the people that tend to. That's a dominant pattern in their life. And one of the common ways people get involved in playing the persecutor is, you know, learning through example. You know, just maybe growing up and role modeling somebody who does that. It's like, hey, when you want to feel powerful, put somebody else down. Or, you know, indulging in things like politics, because in politics, it's generally accepted that one politician is going to be persecuting another. And so it just becomes an accepted behavior. In very dogmatic religions, they're persecuting everyone else but their own religion a lot of times. So there's a lot of different social circles and cultures that kind of encourage this kind of a mentality. So that's the persecutor. Let's go on to persecutor number 1. Okay, persecutor baggage number 1. This one's called the bulldozer. All right. It is this belief: in any conflict, there has to be a winner and a loser. Someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong. That is the underlying attitude and belief. So just take a moment to consider, is that me? Do I think that way? Have I ever thought that way? Or do I know somebody that seems to think that way? Like, instead of cooperating, it seems like they're always trying to get the best of other people, and they quickly switch into a combative attitude. So that is it. In any conflict, there has to be a winner and a loser. Someone has to be right, someone has to be wrong. Let me put this question out there to all of you. Why is it a bad idea to think this way? Like, what are the consequences of thinking this way?
Well, it just kind of takes out compromise, compassion, middle ground, trying to have both parties get as much as they can out of an interaction or some type of engagement, right? You don't, it's one thing if it's, you're talking like a competition, right? A tennis match, a basketball game, and we agree to the rules and we're going to go play, and there's a winner and there's a loser. We keep score because both parties have agreed to compete. But if you're talking about, non-sports, that kind of thing, or a non-competition, then it's thinking that there always has to be a winner and a loser means that you are going to act aggressively because you don't want to be the loser. By definition of these things, you have to be the winner. You think you're superior. By definition of being superior, you have to be the winner every time. So it's one thing when there's a set competition that we all agree on. There's another thing when we're talking our day-to-day interactions with each other that that's a no-win situation.
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically having the mindset that win-win solutions don't exist. So rather than coming up with a solution that's mutually beneficial, you're looking to create a win-lose, or you're looking to win at all costs to other people, right? So yeah, now that's obviously some good thoughts on why it's a bad idea to think this way. At a very basic level, it puts us into a combative mode instead of a cooperative mode. So you might notice that if there's anybody that there's been a misunderstanding or a point of contention that they're not going to a cooperative mode, they're immediately blaming, name calling, and persecuting you in order to feel like they win, right? So they immediately go to that stance. Now, what is the drama stopping truth? Rather than thinking
Can I
this
add
way,
something to that?
please do.
I think the whole idea is there can be a communication misunderstanding. And when you start out with some sort of attack or attempt to win, it puts the other person on the defensive. So it stops communication, really.
Yeah.
I don't think everything has to be a conflict. And if you really believe that there has to be a winner, then, there is no communication.
Yeah, you're right. People aren't really listening because they're looking to win. They're not looking to win over you. They're not looking to meet you where you're at and understand. So there can be a lot of steamrolling other people to get your needs met, right? When you have this underlying attitude, right? Now, I think it's also important that we take a look at all of these with compassion for the innocence of other people who might do these things, because this we can talk about this and it might look like we're looking down on people that flip into this rule, but at the same point, if a blind man were to stumble and knock a child down to the ground, would you call him a child beater? No, because he was blind to what he was doing, right? He didn't really realize. And sometimes people are blind to a higher way of living. And so they don't really see what they're doing. So as much as we talk about this, we want to talk about it and just maintain compassion and see people's innocence who might be indulging in some of these behaviors. Excellent. Thank you for sharing, Charmaine. Anyone else have any more thoughts? Drama stopping truth. So what can we tell ourselves instead? What would be the empowering truth instead of saying in any conflict there has to be a winner and a loser? Someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong. What's the empowering truth that could stop that dramatic way of thinking?
That the person you're dealing with has a one-dimensional strategy and hence is easier to negotiate with.
Okay, so yeah, negotiate with them is, another way of saying that is a win-win solution is possible, right?
Only once they realize that their win-lose situation comes from a source of insecurity and weakness.
Yeah. And the way I would address this is to almost assume we are the ones who are thinking there has to be a winner and a loser. What could we tell ourselves instead?
That's very true. It's how we perceive and process the situation in real time as it's happening. How do we regulate our emotions determines how we can regulate our strategy and our thinking and our responses to that other person who's in a different mode.
Yeah. So you're right. It's like just being open-minded that there are multiple solutions that can be reached that are mutually beneficial. Just reminding ourselves that, hey, there are multiple solutions that are mutually beneficial that we can reach on this.
But it's key that you do not buy into the emotional fight of it.
Of course.
Because once you do that, you lose that sight, that part of the thinking you lose once you start to get emotionally involved and sucked in.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We become more irrational. We can't be reasoned with if we get too emotional, right? And
Yes.
if it's somebody else and we need to maintain a boundary on it, we can say, hey, let's agree to do win-win or no deal. Let's do win-win or no deal. And if they don't agree, well, that's a red flag in itself. It means they were just looking to win and have you lose, right? So
yes.
Excellent. And I think another thing to recognize is that even if we don't get the outcome we initially wanted, we can still gain valuable experience and knowledge that can help us improve in future. And that in itself can be a win in its own way. So
Yes,
that's number one. Anyone else have any thoughts on number one, the bulldozer? In any conflict, there has to be a winner and a loser. Okay, why don't we go on to number two? Number two is the intimidator. Okay, so here's the attitude, the baggage. Instead of asking directly for what I want or need, I have to pressure, intimidate, or threaten others. Instead of asking directly for what I want or need, I have to pressure, intimidate, or threaten others. So, can you relate to that one? Have you ever been in that way of thinking, or have you ever experienced someone who seems to have that kind of an attitude? And then
yes, I think some of the characteristics of that can be people who raise their voice, get angry very easily, talk faster. Those are techniques to not only intimidate, but also keep the other person off balance.
Yep.
Or talk over people or mansplain to people.
I'm talking here. Dot.
Yeah.
But I'm bummed.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so it's like instead of just saying, hey, could we just all please share? Could I just have everyone please hear what I have to say here? It's like we might come off as demanding and bossy. It doesn't always work. People feel a little bit resentful if we obligate them to follow through on what we want out of them. And because instead of coercing them to do what we want, there's a lot of that may go on. So obviously it's not great for social harmony. What's the drama stopping truth on this one? What is the empowering truth on this one? Instead of asking directly for what I want or need, I have to pressure, intimidate, or threaten others. What's the drama stopping truth? Patty, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I think this can come across as patronizing. And so some of the ways in which to handle this, and again, when you're in the midst of the drama triangle, I mentioned this last week, it is difficult to rise above the toxicity of it. So you will default to either becoming a victim or becoming a rescuer in the triangle in order to attempt to come up against the persecutor.
Yeah.
So, that is the default because you're so deep in the middle of it. And I just say this from experience. I've never been in anything like this before in my life up until my most recent relationship. And once I got in, I was like, WTF. And so it's default to it is once you feel a persecutor in the midst of the relationship, then just the default of it is I'm going to rescue this out, or I'm going to be the victim and then try and get up underneath it. But neither one of them is helpful. But I just want to point out that it is a default that's easily happens, because once you get in that, it's cyclonic. It just becomes this vicious cycle, if you will. Catering to the need by agreeing with them that they're large and in charge helps to get the bullying off of you for a second. Because they are intimidating. So you have to see the truth and admit for a moment the truth in what they're saying. You know what? You're absolutely right. This is a very black or white situation. And if, your wife wasn't such a bitch, you probably wouldn't be doing this. I get it. But see, you're not in the middle of it. You're outside of it, and you're navigating through the triangle. But when you're in the midst of it, you're like, hey, yeah, that's one option. What are some other options that we can come up with? But in an intimidating tactic, you've got to set up some pretty firm boundaries with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I would think maybe too, if someone doesn't feel like they can ask directly for what they want, then they're fearing rejection, right? That if I ask for it and I'm told no, then I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to feel worthless. I'm going to feel like I shouldn't have put myself out there. So if I can just go intimidate people to get the same thing, then in my mind, I'm going to have 100% success rate, right? So, and I, sometimes maybe if you ask for something and it's reasonable and the other party's not willing to give it to you, then maybe that indicates that that's not necessarily a healthy relationship or business partnership or whatever the case may be. But to me, that just kind of screams of, fear of rejection. So I'm going to go this other route that is just going to be so just drastic and, Dale Earnhardt on you, that I'm just going to go in there and get it at all costs, because then I don't have to worry about any of those other things.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. So the drama stopping truth on this one can be that if we find our courage, okay, if we're willing to ask directly for what we want or need, there are many different ways we can get our needs met. We can negotiate with others if necessary. Using assertive communication and clear boundaries can help us get our needs met without resorting to intimidation or pressure tactics. It's just embracing that truth, which is true. If we're willing to be direct, there are many different ways we can get our needs met. And then that can be the drama stopping truth that gets us to stop resorting to these other tactics.
So having clear expectations and setting up goals in the relationship, and then reestablishing those expectations and goals consistently. At some point you're like, but you and I both agreed to this, so why are we over here now? But it just becomes a masquerade, because
Yes.
you're in this whirlwind. But boundaries is the most important aspect of setting up the healthy relationship. And once you can get a buy-in on the clear expectations is really the only word that I can think of. And setting the boundaries, because the weakness and the insecurity creates, or they're feeling powerless in some way, which is why they're persecuting sometimes, or they want to gain power. And so this is their way to do it because they feel a loss of power.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a good 1, 2, 3 punch you kind of alluded to is when it comes to this and engaging with people that are persecutors, we can be aware of warning signs, set clearly communicated boundaries, healthy boundaries, and maintain those boundaries. Like it's like seeing the warning signs is a big one, and going through the baggage helps us recognize when people have a disposition to think this way. It can be a bit of a warning sign that we might be in for a persecutor experience. Now, persecutor attitude number 3 is, and tendency is, I constantly compare my life to others who seem to be doing better than me. All right. This is a common thing that persecutors will do, and it results in a lot of jealousy, obviously, but it's constant comparison to those who are doing better off. And it can lead to, resentment, dissatisfaction of your own life, which might come out as a projection, and a persecution on those that might be perceived as doing better off. And anyone else have any thoughts on why it's a bad idea to do that, to indulge in the jealous way of thinking, like comparing our lives, upward social comparison, comparing our lives to those who seem to be doing better off?
I think you're never going to win on that. You're always going to come up short. But the problem with that is you don't see what it took that person to get where you are, whether it's, let's say that they're in sales and they stay an hour past everyone else and they're dialing, they're just getting after it for years and years. And then they might have a level of success that other people don't have. Someone may be, in a certain situation based on trauma or loss or hardship that they suffered for a long time that brings them to a certain spot, or they have a certain trait or something like that wasn't of their own design. And you look at Job in the Bible, right? All his afflictions, lost his family, his friends, the boils, the skin, all the medical issues, all this, he didn't ask for that. He was strong, he became stronger. So when you're jealous or you're comparing yourself to somebody, you're comparing them in one instance, saying they have all these great things, where you don't see the years of pain or sacrifice or loss or whatever it is that brought them to that one point. Were you to compare yourself to them 6 years prior, you may be like, oh, I'm glad I'm not that person. And so you can't ever win. It's a sliding scale that is never going to give you what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you bring home a good point. This attitude is rooted in arrogance, right? When we see ourselves as superior, we make this judgment thinking we are qualified to judge. When, true judgment comes from a place of total knowledge. Like, we're not really qualified to judge. We don't know about other people's hidden struggles. And to compare is unfair. We don't know the full story. People are too complex. The only comparing we should do is against who we were yesterday. Right? And, some drama stopping truth on this might be, instead of doing this, we can focus on personal growth and progress and be grateful for what we have in our life. Count our blessings. You could compare yourself to those who aren't doing as well off as you. Do downward social comparison, and you'll feel more grateful for what you have going on in your life. Right? So this attitude is a denial of gratitude.
But also, right, when you're focusing on what other people have, it also takes away from your focus of focusing on you. You're unable to spend the time to focus on solving your own problems, your deeper problems that you're hiding from, by saying this person is doing so much better over here, let me be angry at them, gets you off the hook of looking at what's going on with you and what you need to fix with you. Because that becomes a very hard look at yourself, and you really have to then really face why you're getting in your own way, why you're not doing the work that you need to do, maybe not to get up to that other guy's level, but like you said, to compete against yourself, you're not taking those steps of improvement, those daily steps of improvement, because you're all your energy is going towards being resentful towards something else, and that's all negative energy on top of that. So you're not going to be in a great state focusing that way. So you're not being in a good state to focus on how to solve your own problems by working on them on a daily basis. The hard ones, the ones you don't want to face.
Yep. So there's
Also-
a cost benefit analysis doesn't seem favorable, does it? You know,
No.
when people are doing an intelligent evaluation, it often involves a cost benefit analysis. But the cost of comparing ourselves like this to those who have more, what's the benefit?
You know what it is? It's actually an emotional cost benefit analysis. It's an emotional one, not a logical one. And that's why people get lost in it very quickly.
Okay, great. So we got a lot of good drama stopping truth here too, that just compare who we were yesterday, focus on what we have, can be a great drama stopping truth to this one. Why don't we go on to the next one, which is the perfectionist? And it's kind of like this.
Can I go back to that one for one quick second?
Yeah, what's up?
I think another way of stopping that drama is by changing your role in that situation, like dealing with my boss. I now look at today, I felt a lot better when I started looking at myself as an executive officer, as opposed to someone who just receives stuff and gets yelled at. So by changing how I saw my role in everything, changed how I interacted. So instead of being a negative cost benefit analysis, it became emotional cost analysis. It became more of a logical one. It took the emotions out of it. And also I built myself up a higher role than how I saw myself previously.
So you reclaimed your power.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds like
redefining my identity.
Exactly. It can be easy to fall into giving ourselves a victim identity, and then catching ourselves and reclaiming our power can be a great way to stay out of the drama that gets generated as a result, right?
Yes. And not only does it increase your energy, your state, but it also allows you to see more solutions to fixing problems.
Absolutely. It's a more powerful position to live from. We'll do a deep dive on victim in one of our upcoming calls.
Okay.
That's definitely one of the victim ones there. Let's go on to persecutor number 4, which is basically, I can't admit to my mistakes. So persecutors have a very difficult time apologizing. And just the attitude is, I can't admit to my mistakes because under the surface, I'm afraid people might reject me if I did. Steve, you talked about that fear of rejection. There's a lot of pride built up in the persecutor mindset. I have to be perfect for others to love and accept me. So that's the attitude. And let's go into why it might be a bad idea to do this. Joel, do you have any thoughts? Why is it a bad idea to embrace this attitude?
Nothing ever gets done with a perfectionistic attitude because there's never perfection that's not an attainable thing. And it basically, kind of like Chris was saying, takes you off the hook for it. And that if you actually look at, I don't know, where there is progress, it's always imperfect action. So
that's a drama stopping truth right there. Joel's going a 1-2 punch. He's why it's a bad idea, and he gave some drama stopping truth.
And while I don't relate to the persecutor identity, I do relate to perfectionistic tendencies. So
yep.
Yeah, it's very much a challenge that I work through sometimes, just trying to get things right and instead trying to take imperfect action. And one of the things that I have written on my computer, which is going to be backwards, it says complexity is the enemy of progress. So trying to
excellent, yeah.
The whole thing, and they're not even achievable standards. Like just realizing that, that perfectionism isn't actually achievable.
It can be detrimental to our personal growth and relationships, right? And
just a little bit.
Yeah. And admitting mistakes and taking responsibility is a sign of maturity and integrity, right? And can actually increase trust and respect from others. when somebody doesn't admit to a mistake and they continually deny it, what does that do for your trust level to that person? Right?
Yeah,
You know that to engage with them is almost guarantee a repeat of the behavior that they won't take ownership over, right?
you can't trust what they're saying. But I even noticed, again, not tied to being a persecutor, but even with like my own son, just in terms of wanting to get things right and feeling like failure is a bad thing, and just trying to say, hey, bud, look, how many light bulbs did Edison make and fail that completely failed before he found the right one? There's like 900 and something. Like, how many times did Michael Jordan miss shots? Like, if you look at success, you only get there by failing. And so avoiding failure is like the ultimate failure, because that's all you're going to do is fail.
Exactly. Great. Love it.
Well, and
I-
they've done studies
I also-
too, like from, oh, sorry, Patty, go ahead. Well, I mean, they've done studies like with brand loyalty and stuff like that, and they've actually found stronger loyalty from customers or clients if there has been an issue and it was resolved versus never having an issue at all. And so that's admitting a mistake, taking ownership for it, just from a business bigger sense than like our interpersonal stuff. There's always something's always gonna go wrong, right? And like Joel said, like imperfection is the way this world operates. And being real, like one of the problems I have with like TED Talks, I think there's a lot of good content, but they're too polished for me. Every pause is planned, every word is, whatever. And people don't talk like that. We all mess up. When I do like my YouTube videos and I mess up crap or I can't remember the word, I just keep going. I'm like, yeah, whatever, maybe I'll remember it sometime later. And I just try to be genuine and connect with people, because I mess up crap all the time. Like, I literally can't remember where I put my car keys half the time. I can't, I leave the house and forget to take all the stuff I was supposed to do, or my wife asks me to do something, I forget. Like, that's just part of who we are. And with that allows us to give each other grace, right? And to say, I'm okay, you're okay, you mess up. I have a great working professional relationship with a lady, and she and I have forgotten or failed to do some stuff that has impacted the other one in a fairly significant way. And we both laugh it off, and we're both like, you know what? I get it. I'm sorry. We're good. This doesn't affect who we are or how I feel about you. And we just keep going. And it's probably one of the best operating relationships I have, this one with Robin, because we allow each other to make significant mistakes and not harm the relationship, and keep going and help each other. And it's so rewarding, to have that kind of relationship. So that's, that's my 2 cents on that one.
You bring home a great point, that having an issue and getting it over it actually makes it stronger than never having an issue at all. So we should be able to embrace that as being beneficial rather than fearing it. Great point. Patty, you have something you can add and share?
I just wanted to say that it is very difficult for persecutors to follow through with goals, and because they sabotage them as a means to an end for themselves. And I believe that some of it is rooted in self-hatred and some internalized abusiveness with negative messages and things like that they're saying in their head. So coming at them with speaking truth and bringing light to the positive aspects of them dials that persecution back a little bit.
You bring home a beautiful point, and I often say this, is that when you do judge people and persecute them, you experience persecution within your soul, right? So it actually churns up disturbing energy in you. You cannot persecute somebody without paying the price internally with a painful lack of inner peace. You might notice that persecutors often end up miserable the more people persecute others, the more miserable they seem to be. And they haven't grasped that connection yet. They haven't connected the dots that when you judge others, that persecution energy torments you, turns on you. You're developing persecutor consciousness, right? So it's like, and also this can help us have more compassion for those who are really critical of others, because even if they don't pay the price externally, they are paying the price internally. And persecution is it's a pretty costly luxury, if you call it that, to your inner peace. Beautiful. Love it.
And this drama buster of being able to find positive, authenticity in the other person, and be able to say, you're really good at, I really like how there are strengths there that you can pull forth that somewhere here dismantles that structure of abuse for them, self-abuse for them, that allows them just for a little bit, if you can keep them in that rail of thought, to get out of that persecution mode. I have found, once I realized this type of relationship and met up with a friend who is a counselor, and she described that I was in this drama triangle situation in my relationship, I was not willing to fix it, and willing to, and Brendan, you even said this too, I got out of one this last summer, because the healthiest thing to do is get out of it, because you can't manage it. You can love them outside of the triangle and set the boundary for it, but when you're dealing with anybody in the triangle, you have to deal with them from outside the triangle.
Yep. Yes. Absolutely. So, great points. It's like the best way to, there's a couple of ways. Usually a drama triangle ends when people face the persecutor that started the drama triangle, at which point they play victim. Oh, why is everyone attacking me? And most of the time people don't have the guts to face the persecutor that started it. So they don't actually approach them. And, now here's the one thing I want to add to the perfectionist, is that a lot of times there's a fear of rejection here, but an important drama stopping truth is this: rejection is not the end of the world. There will always be people who will love you and accept you for who you are, mistakes and all. Love is unending. We've always been loved in the past, we're loved in the moment, and we'll always be loved in future. So we need to have faith in that in order to not have this fear of rejection run our lives, right? Dave, Dave or Charmaine, we haven't heard from either of you in a while. Did either of you have anything to add?
I liked your points there, Fox, for sure. In regards to rejection, there's definitely a reason that they get upset, and feeling of rejection is can be sometimes deep. People don't even know what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Great, Charmaine, any thoughts?
I don't know that I have anything good to add right now.
Okay, no problem. We're just happy you're here. Okay, why don't we go on to the rebel, number 5. Here is the attitude of this one. Getting a coach, counselor, or therapist doesn't work for me. It's a sign of weakness. People who get help are crazy, and most counselors, coaches, and therapists are whack jobs. So has anyone here ever experienced someone like that, who clearly they need help sorting out their thoughts, but they have this idea that is attacking the helpers?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people who just deny everything. It doesn't even have to be counseling. Whatever you suggest they've tried and it doesn't work for them. And they just, nothing works for them, right? Everything someone suggests is a problem.
Exactly. They're looking for ways to rebel against redemption. The key thing with a lot of the drama triangling is you realize that most people that are in it are fighting to stay in it. They're not fighting to get out.
That's right.
it sucks, but they like it that way. A part of them wants to keep it that way. It doesn't make sense to us. It's like, how can you like this? It's causing so, but they do. Just watch their choices.
Maybe it gives them certainty or gives them attention. Maybe fills.
Yeah.
Comfort in the chaos.
Yeah, it can give them a way to meet the needs of their personality, even though that way might be destructive. So they can meet the need for love and connection by pretending to be a victim, right? Hey, I've got so many problems. I get all this attention from people, right? They can meet the need for significance by cutting off everyone else's head to appear taller and criticizing everyone to look smarter and superior to everybody. You know, they can meet the need for significance by coming in as a rescuer, like they're going to sort things out and they like to be needed. And, you know, there's variety that can come with all this. And they have the certainty and familiarity of a pattern that they know really well. And they don't want to give it up because all they know how to do is play the victim. And so it's like, well, the unknown is scary. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. So I'm just going to keep playing the victim no matter what you tell me. So there's, I mean, at some point, really, when people kind of take an honest inventory, they might see that all of these behaviors are just strategies to meet their needs, and that there are, when we're really honest, some strategies that might be better for yourself and others, right? So yeah, but to persecute the idea of getting help is a rebellion against redemption, right? And it's not a sign of weakness, as help can provide valuable perspectives and insights that can help people identify and overcome their hidden faults and challenges. You know, there's no power in ignorance. If you don't know what you don't know, there's no power in that. And we might even say that money spent on the wrong therapist or coach, Chris West in his book says, it's just part of your investment in your better self, right? Not all of them are going to be the right fit, but you can find the right fit for you eventually if you are willing and determined. You can find the right guidance and support. You know, so that can be. Anyone else have any thoughts on this one?
Well, in the relationship that I was in, my partner was a rescuer. And when he was called out as a rescuer, he became a victim, immediately went into that role, and which then pushed me into being the persecutor of everything that he was doing. And then when I said, hey, there's something dysfunctional here, I can't sort it out, but let's get some counseling and try and work this out. That wasn't going to work. He started persecuting everything about counselors and coaches and therapists and everything. So I said, that's fine. Pick one. I don't care who you pick. Oh, you're going to do this. I said, no, actually, I'm not. I'm going to yield to whoever you choose. Now, I put him in the place to make the choice, but then you're never going to get it because they don't want to get out of the drama triangle. This is a dysfunctional way to have their core needs met, which is so incredibly unhealthy. They will bounce around this triangle from persecutor to rescuer to victim every time. And in the persecutor mode, there is nothing that you're going to say or do that's going to make them feel like that it's going to be the best thing that happens since sliced bread to get up out of this thing, because they don't know a healthy way to have their needs met.
Yeah. And a good way to boil it down is that I'll say to people, all you have to do is decide if you want to be happy. And if you want to be happy, don't put any conditions on it. Just decide you want to be happy. And then you'll realize that the way to be happy might not be doing the same things you've always been doing. It can be that simple. Do you want to be happy? Yes or no?
Yeah. I have a friend of mine that I would assume is a victim just for years. And I'm just curious, maybe he's bouncing in and out of persecutor, but this makes sense for him because the few times I've given him stuff, I remember showing him stuff about the 7 deadly sins. He's like, that shit was invented just back when like there was horse carriages and stuff. You can't trust that stuff. I'm like, yeah, because everyone's got it figured out now, right? But I always assumed that was more of a victim thing, but is that him kind of changing roles maybe?
That's a victim the minute you try to empower them out, they'll persecute. They flip into persecutor to fight you
Got you.
because they're actually saying, it's kind of like, you know, those birds that pretend like they have a broken wing?
Sure. Yeah.
It's kind of like that. It's a play. It's a play.
Okay.
And they don't like that you're not going along with it. All they want you to do is feel bad for them.
Gotcha.
That when you realize that, and that if you don't feel bad for them, if you try to solve it, they'll go after you or your solution.
That's right.
And that's when you realize you're actually being manipulated.
Yeah.
They're not being authentic. They're not having integrity with what they're doing here. They're trying to string you along through a wheel of suffering, right? That's why this can become such a problem. Right?
This is great. I love it.
That goes back to Patty's point, which is that the victim wants to stay in that role because that is where they're getting their needs met. Why would I want to leave an area where I'm getting my needs met? Because I never learned how to get my needs met. I never learned how to ask how to get my needs met directly because it was always unsafe to do so. So we developed these techniques, these indirect contracts, these other manipulations to make a patchwork of getting your needs met. And as soon as someone rocks that apple cart, it causes disruption in how they're getting their needs met because they lose that certainty in how they're going to get their needs met.
Yeah. So really,
you're asking the victim person to become healthy and start learning how to ask for what they want in a healthy way, but they don't trust that yet.
it really, what you're going to find is there is just endless excuses. The excuses won't end, even if you appease that one. Hey, maybe it wasn't safe in the past. Maybe it'll be safe now. Well, then they're going to come up with another excuse. The key is to not treat it at the level of appeasing the excuse or the criticism. It's actually the attitude that is trying to find the excuse that is the problem. The attitude that is trying to find a criticism. So in Dave's situation, somebody might say 7 deadly sins came out when people had horses and buggies. We can say, hey, yeah, but it's still relevant because we don't have it. The main thing is, why are you even trying to find something wrong with this? That's the root problem. And it's because their situation sucks, but they like it that way. So that's part of the drama. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, he's super comfy.
Great examples. I love it. I love it. Let's go on to number 6 is the rule breaker. This is what persecutors will say. The rules don't apply to me because of what I've been through. I need to do what I need to do. So they can treat people like garbage, and they can be suspicious of people and make false claims about people and accusations because of what they've been through. It almost feels like it's okay for them to do the things that are not okay for others to do to them.
And it's okay to lie because because of where they've been.
Yeah.
This is just the best. I'm gonna lie to you, and I'm gonna I'm so that you hear what you need to hear for the moment, because that's the best for this situation. So you may say it's breaking the rules, but it's not, because this is what needs to happen right now in order to function.
Yeah. So
it's a survival technique.
Yeah. People use past experiences as justification for bad behavior. And it causes harm on themselves and others and creates negative consequences. Right. And it creates a slippery slope. The more you break the rules, like whether it's lying, cheating, stealing, accusing, the more reckless you become, the more you get away with it. And it escalates over time, leading to bigger consequences. All of a sudden you become a compulsive liar because you've just been breaking the rules so darn long and nobody's put you in your place because you're so harsh with people that, so it can have some, it can build some horrible momentum.
Well, and then it causes the persecutor, if you go up against it, which I did in this past relationship, and they immediately went to victim mode.
Exactly. See, it's switching. It's smart. It's smart. That's what persecutors will do. They immediately typically flip into victim. Oh, I was only trying to help everyone be better by pointing out how you're all screwed up and blah, blah. I was only trying to do a good thing. And here I am, everyone's attacking me, right? That's typically
why are you persecuting me?
Yeah. So if you call them out, typically they'll do that. right? Which is another kind of slight, saying that they don't like having justice added. So, I mean, here's the thing, right? The consequences of breaking the rules apply to everyone. There's rules and they're there for good reasons. Like, don't lie, treat others the way you want to be treated. They're good rules. They're there for a reason, so we have the ability to make better choices that don't cause unnecessary suffering on ourselves and others. That's some of the drama stopping truth. We have the ability to make better choices. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Steve, did you have any thoughts on that one? The rule breaker?
Well, I mean, I think that one's just really dangerous because they've got carte blanche on that, right? Like that's the trump card. You have no idea what I've been through, so screw you. Like that can never be one-upped, right? Some of this other stuff, yeah, I mean, the jealousy and all that, you can kind of talk people through some of that a little bit to go, yeah, you're right, maybe, whatever. But the rule breaker, I mean, this is just someone that you can't reason with, you really can't converse with, no matter what you say. Well, you just don't understand. You weren't be there. Your girlfriend didn't cheat on you, or whatever the hell it was, or your dad didn't die, or you're whatever, right? You can never get past that. And well, guess what? We've all been through crap, but that doesn't mean that I get to drive on the wrong side of the road, or I get to drive on the sidewalk, or, I mean, our society functions based on certain rules and things that we have to abide by. And to the point that if you break a serious enough rule, you can be incarcerated, you can be, sued, you can be fired. And so this kind of idea that I can do whatever the hell I want just because I think that my past merits it is really dangerous. I mean, to me, that's just the kind of person you got to get away from. You just got to break. And it may be hard if it's someone that's very close to you or a family member or that kind of thing, but that characteristic, you got to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah. And then, but you might find if somebody does that, there might be a rescuer in the mix who says it's okay for them to do that. And you're being insensitive. Of course they need to lie and treat you like garbage. They've been through all this stuff. You should be ashamed of yourself. Like that's where you get a rescuer in, doubling down on the rule breaker. And that's what makes it drama, right? And then next thing you know, you feel like a victim, right? Because you're like, now it's 2 against 1 here. And they're attacking me. It's been them attacking me. But now what's going on here, right? I'm outnumbered. That's drama triangling. That's welcome to hell. That's it right there, right? And then you realize they want to be in hell. That's it. Now, why don't we go on to another one? Persecutor attitude number 7 is I'm afraid people will find out I'm not who they think I am. It's kind of like an identity suppressor. If people knew who I really was, they wouldn't want to be with me. Now, let me ask you this, so think, have I ever thought that way, or can I relate to someone who might have thought that way? Would it lead to, suppression of your true identity and cause you to not really, to maintain false appearances, which can be draining and limiting, and avoid vulnerability, and avoid being true to yourself, which can block a meaningful connection with somebody else? Might that do that? Who knows?
Well, this man told me that he had 6 kids and he had been married twice. And as the months unfolded, I found out that these 6 kids, he was married 4 times, and a 5th woman was in the mix having one of those kids that was in between 2 kids that this one woman had. I mean, there was drama everywhere. And at the end of the day, every woman he was with she was the persecutor in the relationship. Oh, she was, on every one of them, he played victim on. Well, now at the end of the day, I'm the persecutor that just broke off the relationship with him over the summer because he's, I just didn't understand. But he refused to come clean on his identity because he is afraid of what people will think. He's number 10 of 12 people, 10, 11, and 12 siblings. He's got 12 siblings. He's number 10. Number 10, 11, and 12 have the same father, but the first 9 don't have the same father amongst any of them. So he's suppressed so much identity for so long. He doesn't even know who he is. And depending upon where he is in the community, he's a completely different person. You see him in one area, you're like, wow, look at this guy. You see him over here, like, what? My mom came to visit. She's like, who is this guy? Every time we see him in a different environment, he's a different person.
Yeah.
He's a chameleon.
Identity suppressor. You're right. Now, for those who actually want to get out of the drama triangle, who recognize they've got some of these habits and tendencies, thought tendencies, what might be a drama stopping truth that can get us out of this idea of being afraid people will find out we're not who they think we are? How about this? I can find the courage and strength to be true to myself and find a way to handle any challenges that come with that. It's true. We can always find a way. We can find a way to find it. And if people don't want to be with the real you, you'll find your people. There are people who want to be with the real you. Find those people. Done.
The truth about it is, though, you've got to be able to tell somebody who's operating in this drama triangle, which I attempted to do. Like, hey, this isn't healthy, but this is, and let's just come clean with everything and allow me to accept you for where you are. But at the end of the day, I'm in all reality.
Yeah, there comes a point. There comes a point when you have to throw in the towel.
You do.
There comes a point. Yes, not
otherwise you are then slipped in and you become a rescuer. You can't do it.
Exactly. And then we're helping in a way that isn't helpful. There comes a point when you realize that this thing does not want to be solved. It wants to be a misery generating machine.
Because there's comfort in the discomfort.
Yeah. And the misery loves company. They'll try to pull other people into it.
Well, I think maybe another drama stopping truth on this one is that, maybe I'm afraid that people will, I forget how you worded it, they're going to see the real me and not like it or whatever. But I need to allow myself the realization that I am not yet the person I ultimately want to be, right? That I am better than I was 2 years ago. I'm stronger than I was 18 months ago. And that I am trying to get better. And just because I'm not the person today, none of us are the person that we ultimately want to be, right? We all want to be better, stronger, more resilient, more patient, more compassionate, more intelligent, more, refined, get those rough edges worn off us, that kind of thing. But I think one of those is, hey, this is who I am today, but the trajectory I'm on, this is not who I'm always going to be. I am going to be better because my personality is that I will continue to try to get better and become a better person through time, right? So I've got to allow myself a little bit of grace there for that truth breaker to kind of kick in.
Yeah, and that's being self-honest, right? It's like, hey, look, I'm still figuring out who I am, but here's where I'm at right now, and here's the values I'm committed to. Watch me. I'm going to live by these values. I'm going to be focusing on self-improvement. And here's my pattern so far. Great. That's integrity. That's authenticity. We get it. We get what you're about. But if you're like, oh, I've never made a mistake, everyone's to blame for all the problems in my life. Hey, what do you like? I like what you like. What the heck is that? I like what you like. I don't know.
I'm not sure you can directly help someone out of the drama triangle unless they're actually seeking. Any attempts, I think, to reveal to them where they're living is just going to result in them switching roles.
Exactly.
So it almost has to be an indirect effort where maybe they start seeing living a different way through you or through something external to them, and then they start seeking.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Charmaine. It's an excellent point. A lot of times rescuers get innocently caught. That's the one role that they kind of get into it, and they mean well, and they just weren't aware that they didn't know what they didn't know. So usually rescuers are the ones that will be looking for a way out and will be receptive, right? And then a lot of times, we may all struggle with victim mentality and persecutor mentality at times, but once our suffering becomes unbearable, we put in the energy to change our ways. The problem is if you got a rescuer who's making you comfortable with your screwed up stuff, it could take a long time to hit that point of suffering where you decide to be like, hey, it's not working out, I'm going to change. If you can find it, you can be the biggest jerk you want, but if you can find a bunch of rescuers to latch onto you and tell you everything you do is right and you're never wrong and everything else, then, you could totally get by in your own dysfunctional way.
And go start your own cult as well. I mean, there's that dynamic that would allow that to happen.
Okay.
Just
Let's go
recently-
on to number 8, the emotional blamer. This one's a bit of victim, but it's used a lot by persecutors, is that other people made me do it. Other people made me angry. Other people made me depressed. Other people made me paranoid. My feelings are your fault. Right? In the persecution. What is that? Is that a good idea or a bad idea to think like that?
It's terrible. I mean,
You made me persecute. You made me mad, and you made me do what I did.
right. Okay. So, I mean, that one to me has always been so stupid. The mentality of you made me do this. Because I remember thinking that when I was, a teenager or maybe, elementary school or whatever. My sibling does something. They go in my room. They break my Legos. They piss me off. You make me mad, whatever. And that just means that you're powerless. You literally are rudderless out in the ocean, just bouncing around, getting blown to and fro. And that is, you'll never get your needs met being that person.
Yeah. So you make a good point. We narrate our life that we are not in control of our emotions, when in reality, our emotions come from our interpretations and perception of the world and events around us. But by placing the blame on others, we give away our power to manage our own intense emotions. It's not our fault. We deceive ourselves into thinking that's true. What's the drama stopping truth on this one? Really? What's the empowering truth?
I decide my reaction.
Perfect. Yeah.
I decide my state.
And I can take steps to regulate it. I think we are responsible for our emotional reactions, and we can take steps to regulate it. Love it. Okay, let's go through. We got 2 more to go through. We'll go through these ones. Persecutor myth number 9 is the criticizer. It's we kind of touched on this one a bit. It's basically saying, I need to criticize others to keep things under control, right? And we talked about that when we're criticizing others, whether this is driven from some sort of skepticism or whatever, we actually pay the price internally by churning up all this disturbing energy within us, which we probably then go and blame on them using other people made me feel this way, right? And it just becomes a cycle, but it becomes a cycle that it's like the minute you judge others, you have to experience that judgment. You just put a cause set in motion. Dave, any thoughts on this one? We haven't heard from Dave in a bit.
No, not this one before. I was thinking a little bit more about the blamer, as I could associate with people there. I'm just really connecting the dots to people or scenarios over the years, and how you see this come out in all kinds of people, not necessarily always bad people, just it could be a bad moment or a weird scenario, and next thing you know, someone's shaming and blaming, or a lot of these tend to come out in intense scenarios, or some people just live there, which I don't hang out with.
Yeah. Does criticizing make people want to be better? even when it's justified.
I think I remember Chris talking about this a bit, but like just really, it comes to a deep insecurity in themselves, right? To criticize others, right? They're literally criticizing themselves. They're not aware of it. Yeah, I like how a lot of this really comes down to self-realization, self-awareness. And when you are in a place of self-awareness or self-realization, you can stop yourself. Holy crap, I'm the persecutor. Holy shit, I'm playing victim. But if you're not aware and you don't tend to care to be aware and you're more reactive, this is your circle of life. More of a triangle of life, I guess.
So there's a drama stopping truth on this one. It's asking ourselves, why should we be critical of being critical? Turning criticism on itself.
Mm-hmm.
Double negative makes a positive. Why should we be skeptical of being skeptical? Does it lead us to truth? Does it lead us to peace? Does it lead us to real long-term happiness? Or does it lead us to a self-imposed prison of painful lack of inner peace? We got to turn skepticism and criticism on itself. That's the way out. It's like, people, if you're really good at being critical, be critical about being critical.
I like that.
Make your weakness a strength to liberate yourself here. Okay, let's go into the last one, is the chaos theorist. So persecutors will often feel that, life is a harsh and dangerous place. It's survival of the fittest, and you have to be tough and ruthless to survive. So hence the reason they can be so ruthless with people, because it's like, I got to do what I got to do to survive. I got to do what I got to do to get by. So don't let anybody get in your way. You got to destroy them, knock them down, anything you can. Just destroy other people if they try to threaten your situation or get in your way. So that's the mentality, right? Is it a bad idea to think that way? What do you guys think? Does it lead to us indulging in fears and getting anxious about losing control and having our guard up, always ready to fight, perceiving threats everywhere, feeling a constant, threat, defending our actions because we believe ourself is being threatened?
This one almost sounds like one of the most exhausting, right? If you are this person, you are redlining constantly, right? Because like you're saying, Brent, there's a threat everywhere, right? I just think about, how exhausting is it to drive all day, right? If you're the driver, you're on high alert, you're watching out for semis, animals, other, pedestrians, you're checking your gas gauge, oil pressure, all these things while you're driving. You're always on high alert. And it's so funny to me that sitting all day is so exhausting, in a vehicle. But for me to even sit in the passenger seat for a little while and to go into power save mode and not have my brain going off looking for, threats that literally could threaten my life if a semi drifts on me and I'm not aware of it. I have to be doing that while I'm on a cross-country trip or whatever. And to sit in the passenger seat when I'm not the one in charge of that, even if I'm not sleeping, I can kind of rest, power down, whatever. This to me just sounds so exhausting to always feel like literally there in every shadow, around every corner is imminent danger that's going to come out. And like, screw that, man. Like, what you can't just put your back against the wall and I don't know, that one to me, I've never heard that in this context of the persecutor, all that, of this chaos theorist, but this just sounds
another way to say it is that the world is a harsh and evil place,
right? And to a certain extent that can be true, right? I mean, we've all seen nature videos of like a week or a young animal getting taken down by a predator that is part of the circle of life. It's part of the food chain. It's part of all of that. But I don't have to beat you or hold you back to get ahead. We can both win at the things we're trying to do. That is a reality. I don't have to beat every person at everything they're trying to do in life or hold them down or sabotage them for me to be successful. Even if we're the same, even if we're doing the same thing, we're the same occupation, or we live in the same city, or we're both the same sporting event, it doesn't matter.
Yep, yep. So
I like it.
yeah, and to kind of bring home your point, it's like, if you're gonna, there is bad stuff in the world, but if that's what you focus on, that's all you're gonna see, and that's all you're going to expect. If you're gonna focus on what's bad in the world, be fair. Also focus on what's good. Focus on the love. Focus on the support. Focus on people helping people, and friends helping out friends, and friends helping out people, helping strangers, and babies being born, and animals being saved. And you got to focus on the good stuff too. Right? So
Yeah.
your focus becomes your reality. We need to know that the drama stopping truth on this. If you think that this is an evil world, you're going to start to be a tool for evil if you think that way. Ironically, but it's like, if you're going to focus on the bad, focus on the good. In summary, why is it a bad idea to indulge in persecutor mentality? Anyone have any thoughts? Why is it? Because really, this is about convincing your subconscious mind that this is a bad idea.
You'll never be happy.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one. That's pretty hard to top.
Certainly nobody around you is going to be happy.
That's another good one. Now, Joel really beautifully simplified that. Yeah, you're going to screw up people you care about that copy your example. People look up to you and they see you persecuting everybody. They're going to think that's how you got to live your life. And then they suffer the persecutor's curse, which is that painful lack of peace.
It seems like a sense of control when realistically it's really the opposite. They're not in control at all. And so that's a maddening place to be, wanting to be in control, wanting to be able to have stability. Meanwhile, your own emotions are putting you in turmoil. You're not in control in the slightest.
Yep. Yeah. In seeking control, you actually feel less in control.
Yeah.
That is also one of the unique things about this.
Well, if you can't see in the short term how like alienating people you care about would be a bad thing, or let alone yourself. I love when Tony Robbins does the Dickens process, which basically gets you to stack what this is going to look like. Like what's your life going to look like a year from now if you don't change? Like if you're the persecutor, you're making people feel bad, you're making yourself feel bad, like everybody around you, like your world's caving in. Like what's that look like? And to like intensely emotionally like picture that in your mind and see what for me it was like, if I didn't change, like my kids wouldn't even love me anymore. Like, and this isn't from a persecutor perspective necessarily, but just with the challenges I was working with. And then stack it like 5 years out. Like what's your life really going to look like if you're still like alienating people 5 years from now and over that whole time? Anyway, it's a really useful process. It's part of his Unleash the Power Within event. And so sometimes we just get so stuck in the day-to-day of like, well, it's just a little bit of pain, right? But if you can logically you're going to end up there, right? You're going to end up a year, 5 years from now. The question is, where do you want to be? So sometimes you can like do the homework ahead of time and like actually focus on that and see, holy crap, I got to change, or I'm going to be in a really miserable place.
Great point. It's like you got two options. You can imagine where this is going, or you can let that nightmare become your reality. It's up to you. You got lots of people prefer the latter. They like that real, authentic experience. I want to let my life become hell. I want to, I don't want to imagine it. Why? Let's go for the full ride on this drama triangle. Joel, so well said. So well said on that one.
Since you're the master of not the master, I first learned about needing to suffer enough to change a lot from you, right? Enhancing ourselves. How would you like take a persecutor? Because I'm thinking about my buddy here. I see him every once in a while. Like, how do I enhance his suffering so he just moves on? Right? I know it sounds wrong, but like it's how we're wired.
Yeah. I mean, you could always just say, hey, I think it's a really good idea if you just negatively judge people, because I hear that really makes your situation better.
Dude, reverse it on
And
them.
you can encourage the behavior until they become repulsed by it, intensify it.
Okay.
Negatively judging all those people over there on the way they live their lives. Maybe you should do that more. See how it works out, right? Intensify. Just give them more delusion until they rebel against the delusion. That actually can often work better than giving them legitimate advice. If you want to help a persecutor.
Okay.
Like,
Well,
get
yeah,
them to
it's-
actually want to rebel against the behavior by just getting them to intensify it. I mean, the other thing is this. The other thing is, I think with, there's a couple of things we can talk about here. And one is that if you are a persecutor, the key is to think of others and try to feel what they feel and foster compassion. Imagine what it's like to be them. Realize that we all go through our struggles and everything else. Just try to have more love for other people is usually one of the ways to get out of the persecutor mentality. Question your beliefs and assumptions. You know, your opinions aren't facts just because you think them. Persecutors, because of that superiority complex, often assume that their opinion is fact because they thought it, right?
Yep.
That's why narcissists can often get caught in persecutor mentality. You know, is this the undeniable truth, or is this just a story I'm telling myself?
Mhm.
You know, consider the golden rule, like treat other people the way you want to be treated, right? How do you like when other people persecute you, especially when you're innocent and they create a false story or narrative about you? You know, did that help you or shut you down? You know, another thing is sometimes people get caught in persecutor mode because they bottled things up so much. You just hit a boiling point, and then it all comes out as persecution. If that's your pattern, then I just say, like, you know that you can get better at expressing your thoughts and feelings in the moment rather than bottling them up and having a persecution outburst. You know, like, which is a more common pattern that people aren't typically persecutors get into. You know, and work on your hot buttons and triggers, right? Like, and get to the root of a lot of that stuff. And we discussed a lot of that with the baggage claim. And then one of the things is, so that's if you are a persecutor. Now, if you're facing a persecutor, okay, remember that their behavior is a reflection of their own inner turmoil, and it's more about them than you. And whenever they say you and insult you, just replace the word you with I. So if they say, you have no respect for people, really what they're saying is, I have no respect for people. You want to know what's wrong with them? Listen to what they say is wrong with you. In a lot of cases, that's how it comes out. Or you don't respect other people's feelings, or you know, this and that. It's like, I don't respect other people's feelings. You'll see there's a lot of truth in that. Their own disowned qualities get reflected as their persecutions. All right. So it's a good way to kind of figure that out. Another thing to know is this. Persecutors may spread false rumors about you, especially if you leave the drama triangle. They may go on to say, oh, well, let me tell you what Patty was really like. You guys didn't see this, but she was like this. Or, you know, Steve, if I only told you what Steve's really like, oh, please, I won't tell you. But if I did, like, there's a lot of that'll happen that persecutors do. They try to do smear campaigns on you, especially if you stand up to them and what they're doing. The key thing is this, that can be a tough pill to swallow from the drama triangle perspective. It's like, how do I find peace with the fact that I know right now they're spreading all kinds of horrible things about me? Just know this. Don't go out there and try to damage your reputation. Persecutors enjoy this, actually. Anybody who readily believes lies about you, especially without hearing your side of the story, was already looking for a reason to oppose you. They were already looking for a reason to oppose you. They were never your people. That's all you got to remind yourself. That was never really your people. Okay, just let it go. Let them be wrong about you. Now, that's one thing to come to peace with drama triangling is just know that when you get out of it, people are going to make you the bad guy. That's the authors that have written the books have kind of said that. They just be at peace with that. Don't go back into it to try to like clean up your name and whatever with these people, because that's part of how they hook you back in. Now, a lot of times when people are trying to invite you into drama, they'll do it by criticizing you, especially on things that aren't true. They'll just say, oh, well, because you're like this, clearly you're like that, or you're like this. And they'll criticize you on that stuff. but you don't want to kind of appease their criticisms and reason with them. That's how they pull you in. Just acknowledge their perspective with something like, maybe you're right, and leave it at that. Engaging with them to try to prove them wrong and correct them will only lead to further criticism. They're looking for a way to find faults in you. The underlying issue is their desire to persecute you for reasons known only to them. Don't address the persecutions. It's the desire to persecute you that's the bigger problem. Why do they desire to persecute you? Probably because they're jealous of you.
Yeah.
Probably to feel superior. You're not going to resolve either of that if you correct them, right? So it's just realize that it's the desire to persecute that's really the issue. Don't appease the symptoms, So, and then here's the main thing I would say to anybody, because who knows if somebody's watching this call because they've been persecuted and they're like, what is the meaning of all this? This doesn't make sense. Why did I have to go through all this garbage? Like, it's unfair. It's unjust. People put me through hell, and they tried to make things difficult for me on purpose. Just know this, okay? What matters most is not what's happened. What matters most is who you're becoming as a result. When people face a lot of these injustices and stuff, that's often when they become more elevated. They become more discerning. They become wiser to these patterns even. Like they ultimately become better through these harsh experiences. Believe it or not, it sucks. But it's like, hey, we don't complain at the pain of a bicep curl because it makes us stronger. So maybe we shouldn't complain about the pain of a drama triangle, knowing that in its own way, it gives us inner strength. By experiencing the wrong way of living, we develop greater insights and motivation for the right way of living. So anyway.
Another thing you can say besides, maybe you're right, you could also say, yeah, that's an interesting opinion.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one too. And then it kind of stops it dead because it's like, what are they going to do? Especially if it's a false accusation. You say, maybe you're right. You're not fighting with them. They want to fight. They like the attention of a fight.
People who are caught up in these triangles as a lifestyle in order to have their needs met understand personalities. They're very acute. They have a really, they've honed the acumen of reading people. And I know in the first 3 months that I was in this relationship with this man, I had fallen in love with a guy that didn't really exist. He was just mimicking the things that I was looking for. And then in the 4th month, where you begin to meet these children and you find out they all got different mothers and all this other stuff, then you realize, oh, wow, who is this guy? Then you try the last 3 months to try and sort it out. And you finally, at the end of the day, when he's not stepping up to the plate to do any sort of counseling, you're done. So at the end of the day, you can't, if you're in the middle of a triangle, the only way you can't fix it. You just got to get out of it.
It's a good key takeaway from someone who sounds like they've got their master's degree in drama triangling firsthand.
And I've never been in one in my life before, but it took me 9 months. And I'm telling you, I birthed into something amazing. Once I found out I was in it and got out of it, it was freedom.
Well, Patty, I know you love people and you are a gift to us all. And I know that in its own way, what you've gone through has given you great experience you shared on tonight's call, which has not only been a benefit to us, but a benefit to anyone in future who might be looking for answers and comes across this recording. So I just want to honor you on that in some way, what you went through can be a stepping stone to a greater good. And that's what you're here to do. You're a force for good.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
So thank you for going through what you had to go through to help others to an even greater degree in your journey.
I don't consider any moment of that relationship as a loss.
Perfect. Great attitude. All right. Other key takeaways. Chris, final thoughts, key takeaways from tonight?
What I enjoyed about the conversation was the difficulty of dealing with people who cannot get their needs met. You can see the type of pain that they're in and the type of dysfunction that they've been growing up and living with, that they never learned how to ask directly how to get their needs met. And these are just different techniques that they're using to get their needs met in very indirect and manipulative ways because they never learned how to do it in a healthy way. And as you see these behaviors, now the red flags will go up sooner than getting so far deeper into it, then realizing that there's an issue. Also, if your last steps out of a drama triangle is that you're being persecuted, that's a good thing because that's letting you know that you're headed in the right direction.
That's right.
Persecution is a good thing in this case.
I love that. I love that spin on it. If you have been persecuted, that means you're probably on the way out of it.
You're headed towards the exits.
Oh man, great one, Chris. Dave,
Yes, sir.
final thoughts, key takeaways.
I liked you said this way in the beginning, and you made sure to emphasize it because I mean you've got it here. Actually, it was on the other sheet you sent. In this one, you have it saying that seeks control, easily offended. Where you develop compassion. Whereas before you sort of said empathy as well. I like using that just because if we know this person has to develop empathy in order to change, then I think it's also exceptionally important that we don't just like, yeah, man, what the hell, develop empathy. It's using that same skill to look at them and be objective and understand that, like you said, they're under a spell or they may not be aware of it. So using the same skill that they need to develop at your maximum capacity to help them, but not so much to end up in a rescuer's scenario, and to be very aware that that's a possibility. If all of a sudden you feel I'm getting into rescuer here trying to help, that's kind of where you're going to step off. And like Chris said, maybe they'll give you a nice goodbye with some persecution. Yeah, that's kind of how I was reading it. And I like that point you made.
Yeah, great. Charmaine, final thoughts, key takeaways.
I was just kind of reflecting on some of what you were saying earlier about we get to choose the lessons we take from the things we experience in life. And essentially, when we encounter things like this, we can choose to, look at what we've learned and look at the kind of person we choose to be because of those experiences. And if we don't, then we're just kind of playing the victim. And so I think it's always good to look at life as though you encounter things in life. And if you always take it and look at the growth you can get from it, I mean, that's really ultimately what keeps us out of the drama triangle, right? It's always looking to see what we can take from both the good and the bad things that we experience.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And Mr. Joel, final thoughts, key takeaways from tonight.
I think it's really valuable to have a conversation about these things because a lot of times I think people have elements like this around them, but they may not know how to articulate it. So I think it's good to not only articulate what the qualities are, but obviously the solutions, which to me is the point. It's really interesting just talking about how, if there's people that are in this triangle, you can't always help them and you kind of have to just distance yourself. For me, I always have to believe there's like a way to help everybody. So it's challenging for me to try to figure out how to help people that may not want to be helped, or that may need to go through a lot more pain before they can be helped, or whatever it is. So yeah, it's interesting as I want to, help other people, especially those in the, in the homeless world that may have a lot of challenges with being a victim, or being a persecutor, or being surrounded by people within that mindset. How to, I don't know, how do you help somebody that maybe can't be helped? And I don't always just want to give up and pull back and be like, well, you're in the drama triangle, sucks to be you, sorry. But obviously, like you guys have been saying, if you just entrench the persecutor, or embolden the victim to be more victimized, like it's obviously counterproductive. So it's a lot. To
I think you can
about.
still plant seeds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
You just can't, you can't force
Can't make
them to help themselves if they're not ready.
you can lead the horse.
You
Yeah.
can, you can
There you
also
go.
think about times, you can also think about times in your life when you've indulged in any of these and what was helpful for you to make a shift.
Usually pain. A lot of pain.
You decided you wanted to be happy. So you can always say to him, "Why are you like that? Don't you want to be happy? You'll never be happy being like that." It could be, but and we'll get into a lot of this. A lot of these are rescuer concerns. So when we go into the rescuer next time, you're going to see we address this as baggage, like a lot of it, and there's a lot of, and the rescuer is really like, it's a developmental step that brings us to being the coach and guide. Because it's kind of like we have the intent and the heart that we want to help. But at first we struggle with methods that may not be as helpful until we learn how to be truly helpful. And that's part of the journey of the guide and coach. Often starts as a rescuer and learns, but doesn't have the skills, and then develops the skills over time and makes the necessary attitude shifts. Because a lot of the attitudes a rescuer has seem good on the surface, like, I need to put an end to people's suffering. That sounds good. Who's going to argue with that? I would, 100%. I'm 100% against the idea of that thought, because I know that sometimes suffering is the most healing thing for people. And if they never suffer, they never think that the wrong ways of acting and behaving are wrong. So it's kind of like there's a lot of misconceptions behind this stuff. Hence the reason it's such a great topic. Okay. Awesome work out there today, everybody. And thank you all for sharing your time and a bit of yourselves to benefit anyone who might watch the recording in future. Let's all do friends forever on 3. Fist bump, we're out. Ready?
That was the whole
1,
time. Okay.
2, 3. Friends forever.
Friends forever.
We're pug and we're out.
Thanks, guys.
Love you
Great call
guys.
as always.
Have a good week, you guys.
Have a
Cheers.
great week, guys.
It's all your fault.